Hello, everyone. I hope you guys can hear us okay. We're going to wait for a couple of minutes for all the attendees to start to try to register, and we will begin shortly. You guys can see that you will have the option to ask questions, and please let me know if you can see in the chat. I wrote a message for everyone. So if anybody has technical difficulties, if anybody is not being able to hear us, please let us know. And we will also have a Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you guys during the presentation have any questions, you guys can write them down, and then we will be able to answer them as we go into the Q&A end of the webinar.
Hello, everyone. Maybe you can wait 1 or 2 minutes, or should we start?
No, we'll wait 2 more minutes. We have around, well, we used to have 8, now we have 6. There's around 20 people that should be, that asked for the registration. So we'll wait a couple of minutes and we will start in 3 minutes, 2 minutes.
Perfect.
If anybody's having technical issues, let us know and we'll see how we can fix it before we start.
Okay, there's a chat function, by the way, that Martin mentioned here below. Martin, did you receive my message?
Yes.
In the chat? Perfect.
Yes, I just don't know if everybody can use that chat or if it's just from us to send to them, but we'll see. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. 6. Okay, we'll wait a couple of minutes and begin, and people will be joining in, I guess, throughout the first couple of minutes of the presentation, and then they will be able to keep joining. But the webinar was supposed to start at 5, so everybody who was in the waiting list should already be inside the
Perfect.
the
Let's
room.
start then.
Yeah, so we can start. So hi everyone, the ones that have not joined us yet, we'll welcome them as we continue with the presentation. But for now, thank you all for being here. We will begin our webinar. This is the second webinar that we host from TieTalent this year, and this one is aimed for everyone who is interested in working in Switzerland and knowing a bit more about the culture in Switzerland, the lifestyle there, and how it has become one of the most innovative countries and the best country to work at in the world by global rankings. And we will go over a little bit with Flo about key facts about Switzerland, a little bit information about how the geography is constructed, how it's divided by different cantons, how the industries work there, and also a little bit about our experience working in the Swiss market and understanding what are the main concerns usually that people have when trying to move to Switzerland. We will try to cover all the bases, but if you guys have any questions at the end of the webinar, we will be going over it. So yes, let's begin. So first of all, we want to introduce you guys a little bit about TieTalent. For those who don't know us, we are a tech job marketplace, and our main goal is to make recruitment simple. And what does this mean? Basically, we want to change the game in the staffing industry and making recruitment simple and better. We don't want the frustration that people usually have, that talents have when looking for a job, that they have to usually apply to different jobs, send their CVs to so many different places, receive notifications from 100 job boards, send like their cover letters and everything. And for companies, the same thing, having to filter through so many CVs, having to receive hundreds of applications. What we want to do is try to make recruitment process a lot simpler by creating a matching system. So the talents, instead of applying for jobs, they can create a profile in our platform, and companies will be the ones that after they enter a search in our platform, they will receive through a matching system different profiles that match by skills, seniority, keywords. There's a lot of different filters that they can use, and they will receive a matching system in which they will be able to see directly the profiles that we recommend, and they will be able to begin the hiring process immediately. They can contact candidates directly, and they can begin the interview process. So this is the thing, the most important asset is not only people, but the right people. And our goal is always to help companies and talents find the perfect fit, and for talents to find their dream job. And I know that a lot of people are usually very interested in working in Switzerland. So our goal is to help those people to find the best possible company in Switzerland, to find the best fit, and to have their career being developed in that country. So I will let Flo introduce herself, but my name is Martin Rubinstein. I am the digital marketing manager here at TieTalent. I've been working here for a little over a year and a half, and it has been an excellent experience. We have been uh, changing and growing the team since I started, and we opened up Germany as a new country in which we work on. We have been working in Switzerland for a long time now, and we have been growing a lot. So very excited for what is in the future also for us.
Perfect. Hi everyone, my name is Florence and I'm working at TieTalent as a tech recruiter team lead. So the aim of me being here tonight is also to give you some of my insights about what I've been seeing so far on the recruitment market in Switzerland. So on my side, I'm working at TieTalent since about almost 3 years now. And yeah, I'm looking forward to spend time with you tonight.
So this will be the agenda. First, I will be talking a little bit about giving an introduction on how Switzerland has been developing as a leading tech hub in the world, and it has become one of the most innovative countries in the world, and how is that they do this, and why is the purpose of them doing this. And then we will go over a little bit more about key facts about Switzerland, how the Swiss culture is, what is the key to success within that culture, how Switzerland is building a lot of international IT teams, what type of profiles are the companies looking for, what are the main details that people should think about when applying for a job in Switzerland, what are the specific tips that they should be aware of, and some of the most common questions regarding work permits and some concerns that people usually have when moving to a different country. We will go over that at the end as well with Flo. So yeah, let's begin. So Switzerland is considered the most innovative country in the world. And this is not just this year. It has happened for the past 9 years in a row. There is a annual global talent competitiveness index and a global innovation index that were both launched in 2013. And every single year, Switzerland has become the #1 country in terms of innovation and global talent competitiveness. This is actually a ranking that was co-published by Cornell University, INSEAD University, and the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations. Um, Over the last decade, it established itself as both the leading reference in innovation and a tool for action for economies to incorporate into their innovation agendas. So it is no surprise that this ranking has become very important in terms of how countries should innovate and how the innovation is going according to plan. And Switzerland has always led this ranking. But why is it that Switzerland has this amazing performance? Some of the reasons could be a decentralized political system, which means that in Switzerland, each canton or each region has a very autonomous decision-making system, so they can actually have a lot of their own authority, and the government is very federal. So this decentralized system, what creates is a system in which each canton can offer different benefits for companies to settle there, and this generates a very easy system for companies to actually create headquarters and settle their companies in different regions of Switzerland. Also a very stable economy. Of course, we all know that Switzerland has one of the most stable economies in the world, and this creates a lot of predictability for growth. And when companies are trying to see where they would have their headquarters, this is a very important aspect as well. We can also see that they have a dual education system, which is very important. You can go for the traditional route of traditional baccalaureate and then university, but there is also apprenticeship, which means that people can choose to learn an apprenticeship and then begin working automatically, which this creates a very, very low unemployment rate. It's around 3%, is one of the lowest in the world. And this dual education system creates very highly skilled workers and very highly skilled also academic people. The government has a very strong funding system for research and development, which means that they are actually leading the way in funding for different innovation and research across the world. And how is this work is in a bottom-up approach. So the initiatives come from the people and not from the government. The government always has these systems in which people propose ideas for research and development, and then they choose in which to invest. And this creates a very, very strong link between universities and the government in terms of research and development. What also happens is that the location benefits are very important. Switzerland is central in Europe, and this means that it's very easy to get from anywhere across Europe to Switzerland, and this centralized position is very advantageous when thinking where to install your headquarters. Innovation is a priority. So Switzerland has one of the most innovative countries in the world, and it also has a lot of different industrial tech hubs and industrial hubs that are very, very important. So we have some of them here. The Swiss life science industry, mostly located across Basel, but actually it's spreading out to different parts, is what people would understand as the biotech and pharma industry. It represents 40% of the Swiss exports, and they invest over 2.2 billion CHF a year in research and development. This number is very, very large. They lead the way in pharma and research and development, and this is one of the biggest aspects in Switzerland for their development. You also have now, in the past recent years, the Swiss Health Valley, which is across the western area of Switzerland. It covers a variety of cantons, but it represents over 1,000 companies, research centers, and innovation support structures. Today, it has over 25,000 employees, and it strives as one of the biggest science ecosystems of that region. The Inno Swiss Government Innovation Agency is a program that is actually one of the most important things that are the key for the success of Switzerland as an innovation industry. It has a policy of allocating funds directly to universities, and then this leads to universities partnering with companies to develop research programs. So actually, this creates a connection between the universities and the companies and the corporate world, and this generates very highly effective investment in science and development. We have, for example, the EPFL and the ETH Zurich. They are two of the biggest technological universities in the world. The EPFL Innovation Park is one of the biggest innovation parks in the world, and it creates a very strong relationship between the small and startup companies that are located in that area with the university itself. And the ETH Zurich Robotics Center as well. It has been funded in 2019, and it has already positioned ETH as one of the leading robotics centers in the world.
Also, if I can add something here, Martin, because for example, EPFL Innovation Park is super famous also a lot of big companies or multinationals have actually there a small hub, a small tech hub, kind of a startup, but within their bigger entity. And here they're also here to really try to innovate some stuff. So it's also actually very attractive for the bigger companies, right? The
Yeah, exactly.
multinationals.
Around the Zurich area, we have a lot of the biggest headquarters of most of the largest tech companies in the world. And the reason they're all concentrated in that area is because there's such a flux of hugely and highly skilled talents and a lot of research development. And it's sort of like a atmosphere of constant innovation and improvement. So yeah, excellent. Also, we have the Zug crypto valley. This has been one of the newest sort of tendencies, but in the region of Zug, we can see that, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, Zug,
Okay.
Zug, we can see that they're leading the technology in blockchain. They have become one of the biggest blockchain ecosystems in the world, and they are leading the technological revolution that we see in crypto that everybody knows about. And yeah, Switzerland has positioned themselves as one of the leading countries in this aspect as well. And of course, we have CERN, which is a very, very known, this could be probably one of the most known nuclear research um, hubs in the world. Actually, here they have the largest particle physics laboratory in the world. And we will see some of the fun facts, but actually in CERN is where the World Wide Web was discovered. So actually the idea of internet was developed here as well. So technology and digitalization in Switzerland. As we said before, some of the biggest tech companies in the world have headquarters in Switzerland. We have some like Google, IBM, Microsoft, SAP, Salesforce, Apple, Amazon, etc. There's plenty of companies, and not only the biggest ones. When you have the biggest headquarters of the biggest companies, you can also have by default, you will see that there's a lot of smaller companies that are also creating their headquarters and research and development centers in Switzerland to be closer to these companies, to have a constant exchange of ideas, a constant exchange of innovation, and people as well. Um, so some fun facts that you might not know about Switzerland's innovation. As I said before, the World Wide Web was discovered in CERN. Actually, Switzerland is one of the leading countries in terms of patents per million residents. So there's almost 956 patents per million residents in Switzerland. So you might come across a person that invented something in Switzerland very often. Switzerland invests around 3% of their GDP on research and development. This is one of the highest numbers in the world. It's close to 22 billion Swiss francs a year. Something that is very interesting, especially for this webinar, is that one of 3 startup founders in Switzerland are not actually from Switzerland originally. So there's a huge international pool of talents from all over the world that go to Switzerland and develop their career and create a company and actually develop companies there. Over 10% of all fintech companies in Europe are located in the Zurich area. This is something that might not seem that crazy when you see 10%, but we have to think that almost 10% of all fintech companies are in such a small area like Zurich. This is very, very, very important. The youth unemployment rate, as I said, is 3% only. The average in Europe is around 23%. So you can see the big difference here. So young people have a lot of opportunities of developing their careers and learning and doing apprenticeship and also studying there. And we have more than 300 startups a year that are founded across different regions in Switzerland. So this is a huge, huge number. And you can see that this is constantly promoting development. There's always companies trying to start new things, trying to create new techniques, new ideas, and they're all based in Switzerland. So we have been working for a long time since TieTalent was created. Actually, we have worked with over 300 companies from Switzerland that have been using our platform. This range from bigger companies to small startups to SMEs. So we actually have been working with all type of companies in Switzerland. And in the coming years, we hope that we can work with a lot more as well. At this point, we can continue going with the key facts about Switzerland, and I will let Flo take over this part. And yeah.
Thanks, Martin. Perfect. So hi again. On my side, the aim is here first to give you some key facts about Switzerland that you probably know. So first of all, we are a very small country. As you might know, we have approximately 8 millions of inhabitants. We are located in the center of Europe, which is also, I would say, a great asset. Although we are a small country, we are, I think, quite complex, and that is maybe what makes us unique also as a country. So first of all, we do not speak one or two national languages, but we have actually 4 national languages. So the first most commonly spoken language is German. So here we have approximately more than 60% of the inhabitants that speak German, and that's more kind of in the Zurich, Basel, Bern area. The second most commonly spoken language is French. So approximately more than 20% of the people speak French here in Switzerland, and that would be more in the Geneva, Lausanne area. The third language is Italian. So here, this is a very, I would say, concentrated part of Switzerland that speaks Italian, which is Ticino. Super nice. South area of Switzerland, where you have some sun and some palms, which is not the case in the other parts of Switzerland. And last but not least, Romanche in French, that you might not know yet, but that's almost dead language, unfortunately, where approximately only 20,000 people speak. But that's also our national language. So I would say Switzerland is quite complex also because, as Martin said, we have several cantons. So we have actually 26 cantons. Each canton is kind of a little state where we actually have some specific rules in each canton. So I would say the diversity of Switzerland is quite interesting because we have a lot of different cultures within the country. Otherwise, something also important to mention that you also probably know, Switzerland is neutral, I would say. In general, we try to not take too much decision. I would say we stay rather neutral in our decisions, and we also have direct democracy. So this means 3 to 4 times a year the population in Switzerland is about to, or can actually vote and decide on laws and some political aspects in Switzerland. So that's kind of a bit the main key facts of Switzerland. I think the main cities you should also probably get familiar with if you are interested in working in Switzerland. Or first of all, Bern. Bern is our capital, but that's not the biggest city in Switzerland. So the biggest city in terms of population is actually Zurich. After that, we have Geneva in the French part of Switzerland. The third biggest city is Basel, and then afterwards you have Bern. So I would say these are also the main kind of cities in Switzerland, and these are also the main international ones. So if you're also interested in joining kind of an international city, I would say Zurich for sure, definitely Geneva too. And yeah, in terms also of international people, as Martin said, I think Switzerland is actually quite international for such a small city, because approximately 25% of the population is actually international. So that makes it also, I think, very interesting in terms of culture, for sure. Here we also wanted to give you a small overview of the main industries. So probably you know some of the main industries that we have here in Switzerland. For example, the biggest one I think is manufacturing industry. So here some of the main names, or the biggest names, let's say, are, for example, Bühler, Bobst, Schindler. But you also have a lot of chemical and pharmaceutical companies here in Switzerland, such as Vifor or Novartis, for example. For sure, the watchmaking industry is quite present also in Switzerland. This is for sure one of the typical stereotypes of Switzerland, but for sure that's also one of our main industries. So here you have Swatch, that is a big Swiss group that includes a lot of different brands, but also Rolex or biggest names that are also very famous. And for sure, banking and insurance companies. So for sure, we have also a lot of banking companies. This was just to give you a small kind of overview of the main industries, but all these kind of companies, no matter the industry, are all have more and more tech needs. I would say really this is super present, especially with the pandemic. Most of them had really, I would say, it really accelerated their need in the tech profiles, and in going more digital, despite the industry, for sure.
Yes, and if I can add something up here also, remember we said that there's around 300 startup companies that are being founded each year. So not only in these industries, like Switzerland actually has companies in almost all industries, and all of them have tech needs. So working in Switzerland as a tech talent, you can work almost in any type of industry or company that you like. It's not that you're stuck into a specific area. So you have a lot of options across all different regions in Switzerland.
For sure. Um, I would say also, depending on what you're looking for in terms of industry, you can find across Switzerland or across the regions several different industrial hubs. So for example, if you're interested in banking companies or joining a banking company, you might have a deeper look at, for example, Zurich or Geneva, where you have actually a lot of different banking companies that are grouped there. Otherwise, for example, regarding the watch making industry, this is the famous location around Neuchâtel, called Le Locle, that is really the heart of the watches. Otherwise, for example, pharmaceutical companies and chemical companies are mainly grouped around Basel, but that does not mean that you're not going to find pharmaceutical companies elsewhere. Of course not, but that's kind of, yeah, we tend to have more and more kind of also tech hubs across the different regions. For example, as Martin said, also Lausanne, around the university campus, you have also a lot of kind of tech hubs there with interesting companies that innovate a lot. Regarding the Swiss job market, we wanted also to give you a little overview about it. As we already saw previously with Martin, the Swiss market is a very competitive market. It's competitive because we have a great level of innovation, a great education system, and all of these makes the market very attractive, but also very competitive. We have a very stable economy, as you might know. The low unemployment rate that Martin just mentioned before is this year, because of the pandemic, actually the highest level since 2010, but it's still one of the lowest level across Europe, so 3.7%. We have a lot of multinationals and headquarters due to the attractive tax conditions. For example, Zug is a very famous area for big companies because the taxes there are also lower, or exactly, this makes it also very competitive across the different regions in Switzerland, because all canton wants to attract the best companies. So it makes it also very interesting for the economy internally. We have also a very great SME network. So more and more SMEs actually are booming and providing super innovative solutions. And for sure, startups also. So we have a lot of also spin-offs from great companies. From great universities that are created every year. So I think it makes it also very interesting in terms of tech and innovation. As we saw, as Switzerland is a very small country, I would say network is key. So that's very important. Everyone knows everyone here in that market. So I would say don't be shy about networking a lot here in Switzerland, because you might one day meet someone, I don't know, at a conference that you're going to meet somewhere else, and that will know the person you want to work for. So it's also very important to stay to stay active in terms of network. And for sure, also high salaries, but for sure also high cost of livings that goes with it. But that's something we're going to also address later on in the presentation. In terms of Swiss work culture and values, I think some of the values you might already have an idea about it. I would say in Switzerland, punctuality is very important. So, for example, if you go to the railway station, the SBB, which is the main provider of trains, will apologize every time a train is 2 minutes late, because 2 minutes for Switzerland is actually late. So I would say punctuality is one of the main values in terms of work, but also in terms of culture. So if you see, or you tell someone, a friend, you're going to meet at 7, it means you're going to arrive at 7. If you're arriving at 7:10, it's too late. So that's very important. I would say otherwise, we have a high sense of engagement in terms of work, but also in terms of private investments, I would say, in general. So you will meet a lot of people that are super proactive and super with high targets, but that are actually going to give everything to reach it. In terms of, for example, meetings, in Switzerland, it's super structured, very organized, and formal. So that's also great, because whenever you say, okay, I have a 1 hour meeting, it's actually going to last 1 hour, and everyone knows exactly what they're going to speak about. And yeah, that goes back to the high sense of engagement. But I think in general, Swiss people are quite hard workers, and in comparison also to European, at least, working hours. It goes really, I would say, mainly between 40 to 45 hours, but there's actually a lot of people that work up to 50 hours a week. So that's also higher, for example, than in France, where I think you have the 35 hours a week. In terms of hierarchies, for example, that depends a lot on the company. But I would say in general, it's varying from traditional hierarchies to flat hierarchies. So depending, of course, if you go more to like a bank, that would be more very traditional and very hierarchical. But if you go more to SMEs or startups, it would be more flat. Afterwards, there is a quite big difference, I would say, in terms of culture for local traditional SMEs, like family companies, that tend to be more traditional. So that means that they would also be more interested in people that, I don't know, speak Swiss German and not High German, or these kind of things. So I would say you can also feel quite a difference between these kind of local family businesses that are based maybe more in the countryside, than international companies that are also more, I don't know, speaking English, for example, as a company language, or these kind of things. So I would say this is also different depending on what you're looking for, but the culture will vary for sure on that point. And for sure, excellence, that's also one of the main values, I would say, of Switzerland. Neutrality, and in general, humble mentality, respect and courtesy. So this means that I would say most of the Swiss people are, I would say, more reserved or humble, at least when it goes to work and recruitment processes and these kind of things.
So one thing to add for this is that, sorry, Flo, I
Sure.
thought when you were talking about this that I found interesting is that now that we have experienced the pandemic and then there has been a lot of remote working, and maybe the teams have changed, maybe the cultures in the companies are changing a little bit, you guys still have to be for sure present in the fact of these values of the Swiss culture. So even though you might be working from home or fully remote, the Swiss companies really value some of these aspects. And if you're working for a Swiss company, or if you're working in Switzerland, you really need to be prepared for this mindset as well.
Exactly. Embrace these values, also trust or these kind of things are super important, especially if you're working remotely, I would say. So that's definitely something important just to keep in mind. These are kind of the general Swiss values that I would advise you to highlight whenever you're doing a recruitment process with a company here in Switzerland, or that at least you embrace. Perfect. And of course, as Switzerland is quite a small country, all the companies or most of the companies are also seeking for international profiles. And this is a fact. There is a market shortage, especially for tech profiles, because there's a lot of demand, but the the people here that are specialized into tech skills are yeah not abundant, let's say. So for sure companies need also to open the eyes, and I would say more and more, especially now with the pandemic, companies are open to also consider international profiles. So that's a great point. I would say in general, if you want to find a job in Switzerland, um, these are, from my experience, the greatest assets for you to make it easier. I would say that's not mandatory, but that would be um, a benefit, let's say. So it's first if you speak one of the national languages. As I said previously, maybe multinationals are more open for you to just speak English, let's say. But if you speak French, German, or Swiss German, that might be very useful for a little bit smaller companies or very Swiss companies, more traditional, let's say. So for sure, if you're speaking a national language, for example, French, then your chances of finding a job, for example, in the Lausanne area or Geneva area, would be easier. And if you speak German, then let's go for Zurich, this area, because you would have a very attractive profile for the companies. Of course, if you have any specific degree from distinguished school, that could be also a great asset. Or if you're bringing expertise in a specific field, I'm thinking of, for example, I don't know if you know a very specific programming language or something like Ruby, let's say Ruby on Rails or .NET technologies that makes you kind of specific and unique, then for sure that would be a great asset too.
SAP as well. Now that
SAP,
the companies are
exactly.
digitalizing, SAP is very, very needed across the country.
Exactly. All these kind of specific technologies, if you know that, if you bring this knowledge, it's for sure very helpful. Also, this is a topic I'm going to address later on, but unfortunately, holding a EU passport would be also easier for you because Switzerland, as we're kind of a specific country, not part of the European Union, it's not very accessible for everyone, I would say, but that's something I would discuss also later on. And actually a true interest or a first experience in the country, I know that from experience something that actually quite a lot of companies are seeking. So of course everyone wants, or a lot of people want to work in Switzerland, but the companies actually like to have a more personal feeling about why do you actually want to work in Switzerland. Maybe you have a family here, or maybe you had a first experience in Switzerland. That's also good, I would say, to mention. And last but not least, also long-term commitment at companies. So in most of the Swiss companies are not really fond of job hoppers, let's say. So if you change every 1 year your employer, that's gonna be seen as a little bit negative. So I would say also that's something important maybe to highlight. If you had a long-term commitment in companies, so you worked for 2, 3, 4 years at the same employer, that's always good to emphasize. Okay, so from my experience in terms of main wanted skills, let's say, in Switzerland so far, I would say a lot of companies in Switzerland are looking for software engineers. So in terms of technologies, what is very demanded these last years or yeah, these last past of years were in on the front end parts, for example, Angular, React, or Vue.js technologies. That's very demanded. In terms of back end, most of the technologies that are also required are, for example, Node.js, .NET technologies from Microsoft, Java, or Rust, for example. Very famous combinations, I would say, of technologies, programming languages and technologies are, for example, Java on the back end and Angular on the front end, or a .NET in the back end and Angular on the front end. That's quite common here and pretty much asked by all type of companies, all sizes, all industries. And otherwise very trendy technologies that a lot of companies are looking for these past months and years are for sure cloud technologies, so AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, these kind of cloud solutions, DevOps environments, agile methodologies, and so on and so forth. So for sure, if you bring knowledge in these kind of areas, it's a very it's a big asset for you to find a job here in Switzerland. Otherwise, in terms of digital marketing needs, I would say we have a lot of demand for example, social media profiles, e-commerce specialists, SEO specialists, content marketing, and so on and so forth. Of course, if you work in digital marketing, I would say if you're working for a company that also is has the German as a company language, let's say, it must be it's very important for them that you speak also German, especially if you're a part of the communications, for example. So that would also make sense to apply for a company that is rather international. If you don't bring, for example, German or French, then I would apply for an international company for sure. In terms of, okay, so that was a bit from the hard skills part, what most of the companies are looking for. But of course, soft skills are super important also. A lot of time we hired people that were maybe junior, that didn't had a lot of experience in the required hard skills, but they were hired because they brought actually the right soft skills, and soft skills are super important. And I think it's also something you really need to believe in your soft skills and also highlight them throughout the recruitment process. So for example, as I said, national languages, but also, for example, really embrace the Swiss values such as trust, responsibility, showing that you're a hard worker person, showing that you're motivated to learn a new technology, even if you don't have the knowledge or the skills today, then just show that you have this kind of proactive mentality and willingness to learn, and also fast learner soft skills. Communication, it's important, and also for sure that show that you are a team player, but that you also can work alone without any problem.
Flo, I think there's a question that is very important that it could be good to answer now since we're talking in
Yeah,
this
sure.
subject. Victor Santiago, he asked if there are companies also looking for junior technical profiles as well, because these skills or all of this seems for more senior positions, but in your
Of course.
experience nowadays, do you think companies are also looking for junior profiles?
Yeah, of course, definitely all the time. And we also hired a lot of junior profiles that did not bring any experience, let's say, for example, in .NET, but the company is willing to train these persons as a .NET, for example, software developer that would also stay on the long term and then bring the knowledge that the company brought. So definitely, for sure, really. I would say it's very important if you are a junior person to just show and that you're a super fast learner, that you're motivated to learn, and just really show this kind of proactivity. And that would really be the thing that makes the difference, I think.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome. By the way, I don't see any questions, so just let me know if you see any question in the chat, because that's I cannot see that.
Oh, there in the questions dashboard, you might find it. If you drop down,
Ah, perfect. Yeah.
you can
Okay.
see that
Yeah.
they're writing them.
Perfect. Thank you. Maybe we can give you also some insight about the hiring process. In Switzerland, I would say in general, it's rather traditional compared to other countries. So for Swiss companies, CV and other documents are super important. So that's something also I would address later on, but it's very important for you to have it structured, clear, nice, because companies actually pay a lot of attention to these points. I would say in general the interview process is quite long in Switzerland. So you have in general, from my experience, between 3 and 5 steps of interviews. So for example, the first one would be kind of a quick HR screening. Then you would be meeting the line manager. Then you might have a technical test or a case study to perform, and then finally you would be able to meet the team, the rest of the team, or maybe even the CEO if it's a smaller company. So just be ready when you apply for Swiss companies to just be patient, I would say, and it takes its time because Swiss people take it, I would say, they take slow and meticulous decisions. So you need just to be aware of that. Also, in general, despite the pandemic and the remote work and everything, I would say most of the companies so far still want to organize a last step face-to-face interview because I think it's still very different in terms of feeling for you to know each other on a personal level. But also what I also always advise to candidates that are coming from abroad, for example, is just to travel for a few days to Switzerland, just to also be aware a bit of the environment, see if the person likes also the city and the vibes and everything. I think it's always good. Home office options are possible in Switzerland. I would say in average it's more between 1 and 3 days, so it's not a lot. Before COVID, before pandemic, I would say almost the maximum was maybe 1 day a week. That was already amazing. Now that's changed a lot with pandemic, but it's still, I would say, full remote positions are still quite rare. Depends on the company, of course, but that's still quite rare. And salary, it's a bit a taboo subject in Switzerland. That's also something I can also mention a little bit later on, but that's not something that you should mention during a recruitment process. Yeah, perfect.
Sorry, Flo, I will interrupt you for 1 second.
Yeah,
Thank you
go
guys
ahead.
for writing. I see that you guys have been writing some of the questions, and we will answer all of them as we finish the presentation. There will be time for a Q&A. So if you guys want to keep writing questions, we are reading them all, and we will organize them and answer them after the presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Where you can apply for Switzerland. So the main tools at your disposal are, for example, job boards. So the main job board tools are Job Cloud, LinkedIn, Indeed. It's a very crowded market. I would say you need to be super reactive because job ads are going to be published and maybe 4 hours later you're already going to have 500 applicants. So it's, I would say, rather difficult to stand out. It's possible, but you need to be kind of reactive and fast and make sure that you have all the documents nicely fast and summarized, because that's also very important for the companies. Otherwise, we also have recruitment agencies such as, for example, Page, Adecco, Randstad, that are kind of the main ones. And of course, other in-between solutions, such as, for example, TieTalent, we're a tech marketplace. So we are especially into tech, but there are also other marketplaces that are specialized into other fields. But I would say here it's we kind of changed the way of recruiting, because it's not you that needs to apply to companies, but you're getting matched directly with the matching positions. But yeah, that's a bit where you can apply and how to apply in Switzerland. So as I mentioned previously, the CV is crucial for Swiss companies. From my experience, also it really makes a difference. If you have the right CV, you can get hired. If you don't, just if your CV is not clear or not written in the way the company is wanting to seeing it, then they can just pass across your profile and just think, okay, you're not the right fit. So really make it clear, clean and structured. In general, I think the best is really to use bullet points, avoid the long sentences, but really put keywords. In terms of work experience timeline, what is important is to put it from the current experience to the former experience. I've seen quite sometimes the reverse. That's really not traditional in Switzerland. And watch out, because a recruiter or an HR person will really spend 30 seconds on your CV. And within the 30 seconds, the person is going to understand if you fit or not. So it's why it's very important to make it traditional and yeah, to make it clear. Also in Switzerland, I know that's not the case of other countries, but we actually include quite a lot of personal informations. That's not mandatory, but that's from experience what I've seen and what I think is also appreciated by companies. In general, companies like to have also a personal touch. So for example, including a picture. In terms of personal data, a lot of, I would say 80% of the time, people include the birth date, also the nationality or the working permit, or what else? Maybe the address and phone number, email address, these kind of things. So we actually include a lot of personal information, which might not be the case in your or in other countries. Personal touch can also be hobbies or something you do extra, like outside of the work, that also makes it a bit more personal. I would also really suggest you to adapt the position or to adapt your CV to the position you want to find. For example, if you want to find a junior, a software a developer position, then I would orient it towards that. If you're looking for a business analyst position, I would orient it towards that. So make it clear. Upload a PDF file and also include the main keyword. That is because most of the HR persons or recruiters, maybe they don't know everything about the technologies that you are using and you're applying for. That's why it's very important to really have the keywords that you are applying for. So for example, if you want to apply for a .NET position, make sure .NET is included and not only C#, because maybe the HR doesn't know that it's linked. So that's why they do a Control F and they put the keywords. And if your keyword is not appearing, they would think maybe you don't have the experience. So that's why it's also important to just pay attention to the keywords.
That's a very, very important advice. That's very, very
Yeah,
good. Thank you,
for
Phil.
sure. Yeah, I've seen a lot of great candidates that did not get considered because the keyword was not mentioned on the CV, but the person was bringing this experience. So that's why I think it's
Yeah.
important. And further documents in Switzerland were quite traditional for that. So school diploma, certificates are important, work certificates and letters of recommendations. If you have that, just upload them. And in the end of the process, you often have a reference check. In terms of interview preparation, that's super important to be super, super, super prepared. I would say you cannot be over prepared for an interview in Switzerland. So take it seriously. First, you do researches about the website, about the company that you're applying for, about their values. You watch, you do some searches about articles on Google and everything. So be super prepared because they're gonna test you out. I also advise all the time to really study the job description a lot, be ready to introduce yourself and highlight kind of the skills that they're looking for in the job description so that they understand why you would be the right fit for them. Dress business casual, that's super important because there is no second chance to make the first impression. I've seen candidates, great, perfect candidates that got rejected by the company because the person was not wearing, let's say, business casual outfits. So in terms of business casual, what we mean is it's really a nice dressing, like for example, a shirt and how do you say, a suit. I would not suggest to put a tie. Or if you apply for banks or insurance companies, then yes, I would include a tie. But otherwise, it's very important to it's better to be overdressed than underdressed, basically, because also a lot of companies you're applying for, maybe you're gonna have you're gonna be in touch with the final client, and this means you're going to be the image of the company towards their own clients. So that's why the dressing is super important during the entire recruitment processes. I would say also punctuality is super important. So in terms of punctuality, this means also getting back to the person with a feedback within the deadline. Basically, if someone tells you come back to me at that deadline, you need to also respect that deadline, because this is gonna indirectly also show how do you react to the deadline if you respect it. But that means whenever you're gonna work with the company, if you have a project to end up in 2 days, then you're gonna also respect it. So all these kind of points, really all the values of the main sales values, I would really try to embrace them during the entire recruitment process. Important also whenever you go to a recruitment process, an interview step, sorry, you also need to prepare questions, because that also shows that you prepared yourself and that you're motivated and that you went the next step, basically. Be ready also to answer like the typical HR questions, such as why are you interested in our company? Why are you interested in this position? Why are you interested in moving to Switzerland, for example? All these kind of typical HR questions. And avoid to speak about the salary. In Switzerland, salary is a bit a taboo subject, as I mentioned before. So in general, we really always advise to not come up with that question as a candidate, but rather let the company come up to you with that question. In general, that's more something that we're talking about in the kind of very end of the recruitment process. I know that might be different from other countries. For example, I know in Germany it's very transparent from day one, but that's not really the case in Switzerland for now. And also sending a thank you note after the interview is always good. You can send an email to say thank you very much, and again, just highlights your motivation for the position at the company. Definitely.
Also, one thing that I would like to point out here is that we have uploaded into the handout. You guys will also, on top of the presentation that we have as a PDF, you guys can also see that there's an interview handbook. We actually wrote from TieTalent best practices for an interview process, which is available for free for everyone. So if you guys are interested in going into detail into this preparation interview bullet points, you will have that available for you to download. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's the next slide, by the way, I think. I know. Okay. Otherwise, that would be kind of my last part about some concerns that the international candidates that I've seen so far on the market, that the international candidates asked me before starting a job in Switzerland. First of all, it's about the cost of living and the salaries. So of course, I've got a lot of feedbacks or people that were kind of scared about the high cost of living in Switzerland. For sure that I mean, Switzerland is one of the most expensive countries in Europe, but definitely the salaries go with. So don't be afraid of that. You're always going to have a salary that is also decent and that enables you to live well in Switzerland. But in terms of salaries, I've got also quite a lot of questions about, okay, what should be my salary on the Swiss market? That's very difficult to say like that without seeing or without really understanding what's your skills and your experience so far, because it depends on a lot of different factors. So depends on also first which company you're applying for. If it's a multinational or a startup, it's going to be different. It also depends on the type of industry. For example, a bank company pay a higher salary than in a consulting company, for example. It also depends on the job and the responsibilities, if you're going to manage people or not, these kind of things. And for sure, it also depends on the job market. So if you're applying for, let's say, a Rust position, Rust is super demanded, and there's very few people that know Rust, for example, as a programming language. So here you can also expect higher salaries because there is a market shortage, basically. Educational background, if you have a bachelor or a master, you could also earn a bit more, let's say, than if you don't. Seniority, how many years of experience you bring, and also the region. So for example, if you find a job in Zurich, you can expect to have about 10 to 20% higher salary than if you apply for a company in, for example, Lausanne or Bern, because the cost of living is also very different in Zurich than in the other cities. Sorry. Also, a lot of questions about the work permits in Switzerland. So if I would say if you have if you are a European, a citizen from the European Union, no worries, it's very easy to get a work permit for Switzerland. So basically, as we are not part of the EU, we have specific Schengen agreement with specific countries that allows EU citizens to work in Switzerland very easily. The process is easy. Basically, the types of permits, you can have a look at the URL, the link that we've put also down on that slide. But basically, you can get the B permit first whenever you find a job in Switzerland and you have a nationality from one of the European Union countries. You get this B permit, which is a temporary residency for 5 years. And then afterwards, you can also renew that permit. Once you've lived for more than 5 years in Switzerland, you get normally the C permit, which is just called unlimited residency permits. And finally, if you are a frontier worker, for example, you live in France, but you work in Geneva, let's say, then you get the G permits. That is also valid for 5 years. But it's very easy. That's literally, we've explained you also here what exactly you need to do, but you basically just need to register to the municipality, show that you have a work permit, show that you have that you have the nationality from the European Union, show your ID, and that's it, basically. Maybe just to add something about the work permits, if you are not part of the European Union, unfortunately, it's a bit more difficult for you to let's say to find a job. It's not impossible, but it's a bit more difficult because you need to the company needs to apply for a visa for you, and to get this visa, there is per year a certain number of there is a quota basically of how many people we can hire outside of the EU. So that's why it's a bit more difficult. But if you have a very specific skill or a very specific knowledge that is hard to find on our on the European market, then that might be not a problem, basically.
Yeah, one of the advantages of the tech industry is that a lot of these jobs that are very specific in tech, you will see that a lot of them will have some sponsorship, but it's in very special cases. In a lot of cases, it's a lot harder, and you have to not only be lucky, but also be very, very, very skilled in order to be able to obtain this type of permits.
And it takes quite some time, and it's quite also, yeah, it also costs something for the company. So that's why companies tend to, I would say, prioritize candidates from the EU, basically. And then I also get a lot of questions about the taxes, as we mentioned. So the taxes really varies, or it depends on where you also live and work. So that's why the best is for you to take a tax simulator link and just try to simulate it so you have a better idea. We also added here two very interesting links where you can do it. It's very user friendly, but this really depends on where you live, if you're married or not, if you have children or not. So it depends on a lot of things. But I would say in general, Switzerland, in terms of net income after taxes, you earn around 75% of the gross income, which is higher, for example, than in Germany, or I think in Germany you earn about 55% approximately of the gross in net. and in France, I think it's about 60%.
For all our candidates and for everyone, also, we will also have soon our own tax calculator from TieTalent. So you guys will be able to access not only the tax calculation, also a salary range calculator that you will be able to see what the average salary you would be earning in different regions of Switzerland, depending on your position, and what would be the taxes that you would be paying depending on that position. So that will be coming early in the coming months. So be ready for that as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I also get otherwise some questions about the health insurances. So that's also a specific. So in Switzerland, it is mandatory to contract the basic health insurance from the day that you start working in Switzerland or live in Switzerland. And this really depends on how much you want to spend and what are kind of your needs. In that sense, you also have here some interesting links where you can also compare. But in general, that's that's approximately I would say 400 euros per person per month. But that's something mandatory in Switzerland. Also some questions about the housing from people that live abroad and would like to, or would be relocating to Switzerland. So we also have a lot of interesting links where you can also find a house or an apartment. I would say in general, what I advise to candidates that need to relocate before starting a new job in Switzerland, the best is for you to rent something temporary like Airbnb for the first weeks, where you can easily do the apartment visits once you're inside, because it's very difficult to contract an apartment while being remote. I would say it's not the best case scenario, because sometimes you get also a bit disappointed once you arrive on site if it's not exactly how you were expecting it in terms of lightings or anything. So in general, that's what I recommend to the candidates.
Yeah, we all been through some of that experience at any point in
Exactly.
our life.
For sure. For sure. And last but not least, also I get some questions about the schools, for example, for kids, for people that would relocate with their family. So in Switzerland, we have a great education system where most of public schools are for free, and they are, great schools. So you don't need to go to private schools to have a good education in Switzerland, which might not be the case for all the countries. So that's why I would say really no problem in terms of education for your for kids, because you it's really, you get a super great education in Switzerland for almost nothing. So yeah, definitely. We've also put you some other very useful informations and links about Switzerland. So for example, these two ones are kind of the official Swiss ones, where you get a lot of information about a lot of different things, and they get also actualized every single day, also regarding COVID rules and everything that changes quite every day. So don't hesitate to visit them, definitely. And yeah, that
Okay,
would be it on our side.
so thank you very much, Flo. That was very, very interesting.
You're welcome.
And thank you for the time. I think it was very complete. We went over a lot of different aspects in terms not only on what the companies are looking for, but you as a talent, what you need, what you should be prepared for, how your CV should look like. So this presentation will be available for everyone to download, and we will also have it available on YouTube in the coming days. But right now, I was thinking we can go to the questions. You guys have been writing quite some questions that I find that are very interesting. We can start by Martina. She asked actually about she finds it very strange that the salary would be a taboo questions when she says that every interview she's had, um, she has been asked about uh, in
Mhm.
Switzerland. The salary was a topic of conversation in every single interview, so she
Yeah,
doesn't
no.
quite understand.
No, in the sense it's taboo. It's not in general. It's not something that I personally would address as a candidate for the first interview, but rather let the company address you that topic. Because I know that for example, in Germany, they are super transparent with the salary ranges. So, for example, the salary range is even indicated on the job description publicly. I mean, published on the job boards. That's today not the case in Switzerland. And in general, it's something that is not addressed in the first interview step. I don't know what was your experience so far with that, but probably you got asked about the salary question during the second or maybe the third interview, right? So that was meant in that sense. Me personally, I don't suggest to the candidates to come up with the salary question, but rather let the company come to that aspect in that sense. Is it clear,
Excellent.
maybe?
Yeah, I think it's very clear.
Okay,
We will see if she wants to write, then we'll see. But I think it's very clear the idea of like letting the company first talk about it, and then once the company talks
exactly.
about it,
Yeah,
you can talk about the subject, no problem.
yeah.
Giovanna asks, how much does it cost to rent a flat in the Lausanne area? Maybe not too luxury, but something nice in terms of understanding the cost of living.
Well, that's difficult to say. Depends exactly where, if it's around the railway station or not. But for sure, yeah, depends if it's furnished or not and everything. So, we've actually added quite some links. I think if you go back to the presentation, we have some interesting links about where you can also find, yeah, for example, HomeGate or Imo Dream. But like from in my mind, I would say it's around 250, no, 2,000 to 2,500, something like that, Swiss francs. But for sure, it depends on a lot of aspects. Hard to say like that.
We have another question. This one is very, very interesting for you, Flo, as an experienced recruiter team leader. From Mark, do you see some trends in the tech market and some jobs that are new and being wanted by companies that did not exist 5 years ago, for example?
Yeah, for sure. I would say all the site reliability engineer positions, all the cloud positions that are actually quite some new technologies, I would say. These are really super demanded. DevOps engineer positions, these kind of things that are pretty new, that exists maybe since, yeah, 3, 5, max 7 years, something like that. Also, for example, Rust. I had some demands on Rust. Rust is a language, a programming language that exists since 2018, so approximately 3 years ago. So definitely all these kinds of positions. But I would say really DevOps and clouds positions are the most trendy ones that are not so old, let's say.
Yeah, and we can also assume that now that we're living in a modernization era, that due to the pandemic, we had to like modernize almost by need. This trend will keep advancing at a faster pace. Probably there's going to be new jobs coming up. There's going to be new
For sure,
uh,
yeah.
needs that are going to be coming up as we become more and more digital, for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
Eduardo
Yeah.
asked a really good question as well. He said, do companies take under consideration profiles that don't necessarily have academic degree but proven experience and work experience?
Yeah, for sure. So this again, it really depends on the company. I've got companies that said, no, we consider someone with a bachelor minimum. Okay, fine. Even if the person was bringing, let's say, 15 years of experience, for example, in .NET, and you have the other companies that for sure consider you as bringing the right experience. Thus, they don't, let's say, care about your education. So really depends on the type of company, I would say. But as a concrete aspect, as a concrete example, for example, the director of Credit Suisse, I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the biggest banks in Switzerland. He did not do a university. He did a apprenticeship basically, and he is today the director of one of the biggest banks in Switzerland. So for sure, definitely, that's you will find companies that accept that without any problem.
Yeah, and also Eduardo, when I was talking about the education system, the dual system, we have to remember that in Switzerland, you can take both routes. So a lot of people don't take the university route and they take apprenticeship and they learn and they begin working. and that is also valued a lot. It's not that it's looked down upon or that is looked that the university people are different or better. So it's a system in a country in which also having the skills of learning and being someone that has worked and has a lot of work experience is really highly valued as well.
Mhm. Definitely.
And I see one more question from Giovanna as well. She first says thank you, Flo, for your presentation, and she wanted to know what would be an average salary for a software engineer specializing in .NET, since we've been talking about that a lot.
Mhm.
What would you think,
Uh,
in your experience, would be an average salary?
Yeah, depends again how many years of experience you bring. If you bring, let's say, between 1 and 5 years of experience, you can expect from 90 to maybe 110,000 Swiss francs. And if you bring more than that, you can expect from 110 to 120, 25, 30 max. Let's say something like that. Swiss francs a year, brutto.
That's pretty good. Okay, if you guys do you guys have any other questions? I don't see any other ones being written here. Um, but yeah, I think we have covered quite a lot. We can wait a couple seconds to see if anybody else wants to write. Eduardo says, thank you for the response. Great webinar. So thank you, Flo.
Thank
And
you,
you
guys.
guys can also remember that this presentation will be available to download as a PDF, and that we will be uploading it into our social media and YouTube channel, so you guys will be able to see it. And don't forget to download the interview handbook as well. This is something that I find that would be very interesting for candidates that want to apply and work in Switzerland. To know more about how to conduct themselves in the interview process is one of the most important things when applying for a job. I would say that even sometimes uh, a lot more important than what you bring as experience is very much the impression that you can generate as well. So that equally as important as your experience. So be very prepared, and this material is available for free. So Giovanna says, thank you. Looking forward to finding a job in Switzerland. Excellent webinar.
Mhm.
So guys, I think that we can call it end. Thank you very much for participating in the webinar. Thank you, Flo, for your excellent presentation. It was very, very insightful. And yes, you can check TieTalent, our website. You can go into our social media. We're constantly uploading ebooks, handbooks for best practices, blog articles that we find interesting for candidates. You can also join our community, create your profile at TieTalent, and maybe a company will take a look at your profile and you might find and develop your career in Switzerland. So if you're interested in working in Switzerland, definitely create a profile at TieTalent and follow us on social media, and of course be part of our community.
Great. Thank you so much for participating, and thank you, Martin. Have a great
Yeah,
evening.
thank you, Florence. Have a great evening and goodbye
Bye.
to everyone.
Bye. Ciao.